I will start this session off. So before we start, I'd like to say, dear Montessori colleagues from all over the world, I would like to welcome you to today's Montessori community conversation. Normally at this moment, I would be saying I'm very happy to see you, and we would be chatting and asking each other about how we are. Today, at this occasion, those words do not seem as appropriate. Today, I will only say, welcome, colleagues and friends. We are in awe to see how many of you, our Montessori colleagues and friends from north, south, east, and west, from far ends of the world, came to this session. My name is Mirka Vlčková, and I'm here together with my colleagues from Montessori Institute Prague. We will host you through this meeting. We at Montessori Institute Prague and at Lead Montessori and our dear colleagues, trainers and speakers are very saddened by the crisis that is happening in the world as we speak. Maria Montessori wrote that establishing lasting peace is the work of education. So as educators and as members of the global Montessori community, we are called to do something. We are called to help to make this world a better place. And that's why we are holding this meeting today. Today, in the midst of the war, which for some of you is happening directly where you live, and for some of us, it is happening right at our doorstep, we gather to do one thing. We gather to be a community, and we gather as a community to put the child in our center. You all know that for us Montessorians, the child is our shared purpose. And the child today is what we are going to focus on. Before we do that, I would like to stress and make very, very clear that in this community, in this gathering today, each, and by that I mean each individual, regardless of their country, nationality, culture, language, history, or belief, each individual person in this meeting is acknowledged, valued, and respected. In this meeting today, we unite in the Montessori mission to support children of this world. I'll say it one more time. In this meeting today, we unite in the Montessori mission to support the children of this world. So before we start this meeting, I'm going to invite you to take a tiny moment to let those words sink in. We are here for the child. We are here united as a community. I would like to welcome our great speakers, 4 people who literally from one day to another, and one of them actually from 1 minute to the second, which really truly happened. We sent an email to one of the speakers and she replied the minute after that and said yes. I would like to welcome you and thank you for the time and for the courage to do this for Montessori Global Community. So welcome Tina Suominen, an AMI 0 to 3 trainer. Welcome Madlena Ulrich, an AMI 3 to 6 trainer. Welcome Carla Foster, an AMI 6 to 12 trainer. And welcome Dini Rebild from Denmark. Dini is the person who agreed from 1 minute to the next to join us. Dini worked and established a refugee camp in Copenhagen, or worked in a refugee camp in Copenhagen, and that's why we invited her to be with us today. We felt that it was really, really important and useful to have someone with us who actually encountered the war trauma face to face. So Tina, Madlena, Carla and Dini, thank you again for coming, for agreeing to be our speakers. We seek your guidance on how to speak to children about the war and about what is currently happening. Please share with us your words and your wisdom and your experience. For the audience, questions, please Anything you think of that you want to ask, you can put it in chat. The chat is directed only to me. It's not a public chat. We will only address questions at the end of the session, and they will be questions that are related to the topic. The topic of today and the purpose of our community today is to gather around the child and to speak about how to support the child through the current crisis. And a reminder for those of you that just joined recently, we are interpreting this event into Czech, into Ukrainian, into Russian, and into Chinese. And we are very thankful to our interpreters for their volunteering time to be here with us today to make this available to the global Montessori community. Thank you, and Madlena, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for actually giving me the word first. Actually, I think I would like to turn it over to Tina, because Tina is also going to talk a little bit more about the parent and how the parent is involved in this and must be an important part of us to be considered when we are talking with the children about crisis and about the current situation in the world, and when we're trying to reestablish a peaceful environment for the children that we are talking to. So how about Tina, you go first, and then I will take over after you. Is that okay? Thank you.
Sounds good. So hello, everyone. I'm talking very shortly, giving just, I think, some main points that we all should keep in our minds as we are all working with children around us and with us. So with this hard and sad situation, as we all here together now, we are here to support each other, and we are here to support all children with and around us, of course. And we can support the families and teachers in our communities by giving them some guidance. How should we work? How should we word our feelings and things that we can all live in peace together? And we all need to stick together, no matter if our own opinions are the same or different. But it's important that we as adults really stick together for the benefit of the child. The main goal is to build a better place, better world to children as a Montessori community all together. All of us who are surrounded by children under age of 3, as parents, as teachers, maybe as grandparents, or staff members of on our schools, we really need to make sure that the little ones are not exposed to this news or any information that can harm them or their minds. That can easily happen through TV or internet or radio or newspaper pictures, for example. But we are the guardians of the safe place for the children. We need to really pay attention when and where we are talking about this information that is coming in from everywhere around us nowadays. So that the little ones, they really do not need to be here or see these things. They are not ready for these things as they are so young. We also need to be concerned about what and where we are talking about these things. We should try to stay calm and mindful and make sure we don't pass our own fears and doubts and ideas to the children, even we will and we might have them. We have to make sure that we have a place where we can share our thoughts and ideas with another adult or other adults around us. But that's nothing that we need to share with these little ones. We might be scared on this situation and very sad, but we should really not pass our feelings and emotions to the little ones. We all know that they have the absorbent mind, and we know the power of it. So we really need to think and act to keep the children safe. So let's try to stay calm and not talk about these things, these topics around children. It is our task to give physical and psychological feeling of security to all of the children around us. We need to keep our attitude of hope, of trust and love, so that children can feel that they are safe and surrounded by restful and secure adults who will take good care of them, and they can trust us in every moment as we are with them. It's very important for all of us that we keep the routines, the normal daily routines, as stable and as normal as we can, both at schools and at homes. Let's try to do the normal daily things, go out and play, do practical life activities, eat and gather together and enjoy the moments at homes and at schools, and all of us have a good night's sleep. That will help us all go through these hard moments and help the children to cope this situation so that they doesn't even know what's going on. As teachers and staff members, we can support parents and families by letting them know that we are there for them. We can organize moments that we can really be there and listen what they want to say, and if they want to share their thoughts. But we need to do that outside the ears of the children. But I'm sure if we all just want to have that, we will do it, and we can do it, and we can all share and gain more strength and knowledge about these things together. We really need to respect each and every one of us, no matter where we are from, what kind of background we come from, and welcome all families to be equal members of our communities. I think these are the main things that we can do for the benefit for these little ones. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tina. And I will give the word to Madlena now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And of course, as Tina says, also our responsibilities as adults who are surrounding the 3 to 6 year old are very similar. When Mirka first reached out to us, I don't even know how many days it was ago, but not many, to join this, I was first in doubt, because I thought, what do I know about crisis? Not really anything directly. I mean, yeah, minor crises, but not in the years I've worked in the children's house with the children, and the world wasn't afflicted by any particular major crisis that was directly working with the children, except for 9/11, which was a crisis, but that in hindsight seems to be so long ago. I needed to really think about, what did we do or what did we not do at that time to support our children? As your names are flicking by here on when people are coming in, I see that there's so many people here that I know from various countries, various places, from various kinds of situations. And of course, when we are here now to talk about this, we are mostly thinking about or what I can say something about is that children, like Tina also spoke about, who are in the periphery, right? Let's say the children in Norway, the children in Finland, the children who might not be directly afflicted by the war in the moment, because other people need to talk about that topic. And maybe Dini will share more of her experience also with that, of how we can help children also when they come out of a zone of war and conflict, because there is a lot of help needed, not only for the children, but also for the families, teachers, and of course, that whole community around the child. The day after the war erupted in Ukraine, the Norwegian government released some of their guidelines of how we can talk to children about war and conflict. It is not something that the Norwegian government necessarily has put together by themselves, but rather also something that builds on the knowledge of associations like UNICEF or the Red Cross and other such kind of associations who work with children and families in conflict areas and with children afflicted by war. So that's really what I wanted to share with you at this point, to maybe help you guide your conversation with the children in your community in that way. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint with that, if that's okay. So one of the things, wait a second, this was not the first one. Here we are. Okay, sorry. One of the things that was emphasized very much was that we should take time and make it possible for children to talk, to ask questions that they might have, because when they come into this age of 3 to 6, they might be more exposed to what is going on because they listen to the adults talking about it. They see adults being upset, crying. Maybe also the adults react in a stressed way because they are worried about what is going on with people they know, with family, or maybe also just in general with the world at the moment. They see little snippets of the news, maybe on a phone, maybe on a screen. They might hear the news, they might see a newspaper. And because they are very attentive and take in all this, they might have all these questions. Even though they might not be directly afflicted by the war, they still know that something is going on because they are very attentive to these changes. So we, as their teachers or parents, guardians, we need to be attentive to that and make sure that the children know that they can talk about this, right? That we will be there to listen. Listen to what they are worried about, right? And also sometimes some children are very open about this. They come to you, they talk to you about this. Do you know what I saw? Or I saw this, I saw that. You are catching what they're worried about in their conversation, but other children do not. Other children might be very quiet. Maybe they're carrying around this fear inside them, but they don't have words to express it. They don't know how to talk about it yet. So just because they don't, doesn't mean that they are not attentive to this, that something is going on, and that they might not have fears inside them. So we should also invite those children into the conversation and be very sensitive to what is going on in their little minds. And at the same time, of course, as always, keep the balance, right? Not overexpose the children to it or force them to a conversation that they might not be ready to have. This is also more maybe geared towards our older children, or 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, rather than the 3-year-olds who might not might not really have that kind of need yet. We should also be honest in sharing our own thoughts and feelings without overloading the child. And it's okay for them to know that we are sad, that we are worried, that we are upset about something. But we can, it's not the burden that the child has to be responsible for, that they should feel responsible for. But by sharing our feelings and sharing that we are all affected by that. It might also help the child to know that I am feeling like this, but the adults are also feeling like this. We can share our feelings and our thoughts, and help each other, finding comfort in each other also. So in general, also in your classroom, in your family, we might want to find out how we can create this an atmosphere where it is okay to be afraid, to be sad, to be worried. Sometimes the children are making sure not to show it because they don't want to burden the adults with it. Right? If they see that the adults are saddened and troubled with this, they might put that on their own shoulders. Right? Even our 5-year-olds might do that and hide their own feelings because they feel they don't want to add to the burden of the parent or of the adults around them in their classroom. So this is difficult, right? How can you share that you're worried and that you are thinking about this at the same time that you are assuring the child that I will be okay, right? I, as an adult, I'm taking care of myself. Right? And even though I might be crying right now, or I might be worried or preoccupied in my mind, I will still be an adult and take care of my own feelings. And you as a child do not have to do that. What is often difficult is that the children take in the news bits by bits, right? And as the news are these days, they're playing the same sequences over and over and over again. And you see the bombs being dropped, the towers falling, the fires erupting in morning and evening, often several times within the same 5 minutes. The children don't know whether this is something new each time or whether it is a repetition. They might just get bits and pieces of it, and therefore they don't have a clear understanding what is going on. They just know that it is something terrible that is afflicting a lot of people. The 3 to 6-year-olds don't know whether this is outside our door or in our country or somewhere else. They have a very unclear understanding about geography in many ways, and we have some things in our classroom that can help us with that, right? Looking at the maps, looking at the globes, putting things into perspective of saying that even though it is in your face when you see it on the screen, it is, for Norway, for example, not something that is outside our door, but still within, this is part of our world and something that we still are worried about. Of course, we want to speak in a language that a child understands. Right? That explaining such a conflict to the children, to the 3 to 6-year-old, is probably not really possible, or justifying, or trying to explain to them why it is happening, because it is complicated for us often to understand also. Right? So it is more about this. What we should talk about really is rather how this affects people and how we can help people. As Tina said, we should limit the child's exposure as much as we can. But of course, if this is something that is affecting your own family, it is not often possible to limit this to the absolute minimum. What is also something that the children might not see in the news is everything that is being done to find solutions to restore peace, right? Meetings that are going on between politicians, negotiations that are being done. Of course, we often feel in the situation like it is right now that not enough is being done. It's not going fast enough. It's not going to stop enough. But there are, strangely enough, there are rules in wars also. And there are rules of how these things have to take place. There are many people trying to solve this and find better solutions and find back to diplomacy and a peaceful way of solving a conflict. That is, again, we cannot explain really that to our 3 to 6-year-olds, but we should assure them that there are people out there trying to do what they can in order to restore peace. For slightly older children who might also know a little bit maybe about this, we can talk about that there's also an international community, right? And their role of protecting countries, of making sure that we find different kinds of solutions to conflict than war. Many schools celebrate the UN Day in schools every day. Right? So the children might already know a little bit about this, even though they're at the age of 3 to 6, not really concrete, but they know that there are some presences out there that people are working on this. So we need to help them understand a little bit more about this. And sometimes the children want to help. Right? Even the young children, they see also in the news pictures of people protesting, pictures of people collecting help for refugees. They might see directly where they live that refugees are arriving or being placed somewhere. And this is a way of how the children can maybe also overcome some of that fear by actually being actively involved and say, I can also do something about this. Maybe the school can do something. Like Mirka posted the other day here, information of how a school was doing a fundraiser through a breakfast, and the children raised a lot of money, which can then be sent to the appropriate NGOs and associations who are working with refugees and with children in war. It is, or maybe there are other ways of doing something, right? We all feel like we should be doing something to help, and often we feel hopeless, or we think that, oh, my little contribution, what is that? Nothing really to stop a conflict like this. But maybe it is just about going over to your neighbors and asking them how they are feeling, offering somebody some help, having a fundraiser, writing a petition. It can be some small ways, it can be large ways, it can be political, it can be just made in a private way. But I think it is also important that we help and that we involve the children in this in whatever way it is appropriate for their age group. So yeah, these are some of the thoughts I wanted to share for the people who are working with the children there out in the classrooms. So forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Madlena. We do have some questions for you and for Tina, but let's first hear from Carla, and then we'll look at the question. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I feel very humbled. I do not consider myself an expert on children in crisis, or even able almost to process this whole time myself. It is easy to feel kind of weighed down by a sense of impending doom. And I think that that is perhaps natural. And at the same time, we do need to consider Montessori's call to us to work with our elementary children towards being able to build the Nazione Unica, not the different nations of the world, but the united nation of humanity. And which means we have to be calling on the children to examine us and our humanity. We look to our work with our story of the human, with its mind, its heart, and its hands, and how through hundreds of thousands of years, human beings have come into difficulties and they have solved problems, and they have been the ancestors of all of us, that we are a solving problem species, that we have also almost from the beginning been a threatened species. We have been threatened by the elements, and we have been threatened by wild animals, for example, and sometimes even by each other. And we have two very different ways of dealing with threat. We can deal with threat by defense and aggression, and we can deal with threat by finding our community and building strength within our community. And sometimes we must face a threat with aggression, and sometimes we must rather build community and find other solutions. For our elementary children, if we want to talk to them about that, we have choices that we make. We have to think about the fact that culture and all the pride that we have in culture is not the same as nationalism. It is not the same as saying that we are better than anyone else. And that it is also not needing to be in agreement with a political system. So pride of culture is completely separate. And the children need to know that the cultures do not necessarily need to be wrapped up in this conflict, that it's not about necessarily us against them as cultures. We also have to help the children think about extending their compassion, their ability to be compassionate, that suffering is something we want to try to alleviate in other people. So especially our 9 to 12-year-olds often really do need to do something. They really do need to raise money or find ways to support these international organizations. It's very true that what Madeleine said, that we have to be constantly focused on what is being done by people who want peace, and what our community does in terms of building peace within our community. That in our classroom communities, we have conflicts, and they are not armed conflicts, usually anyway. So they are not great threats to the future, but they still need to be dealt with. The children know that, and they have learned, hopefully, strategies to cope with those conflicts. They know how to think about conflict if we've worked with them with it. They know to think about, does this conflict, is it about things? Is it about territory? Is it about status or who decides? And for them, most conflicts are relatively easy to resolve. And it is more scary when we don't think there is a resolution in sight. Especially 6 to 7-year-olds, they're able to have a conflict with their friend and be best friends the next day. And they may can be in and out of conflict with people who they love and still bounce back and be best friends. For them, it's very difficult to think about conflicts that seem to have no easy resolution. Like, why can't they just be friends? Is sort of the 6 to 7-year-old answer to most things. Why can't they just be friends? And I think when you're talking to them, you sort of say, you are the wise ones in this. Yes. Yeah. Because maybe that is the real solution is, why can't one just be friends? However, they don't have the power to just go and wag their finger and tell people, you need to get over this, right? You need to make it better, and you need to fix this because this is not acceptable, even though they probably could do a better job of fixing these things than we could. We, like Malena said, we do have to help them correct misunderstandings, whether it's about where this is going on, who is in the conflict, and help them to correct misunderstandings about things, because they also can be rather catastrophic if in their thinking, if they think things are very close and very imminent. Remember, they don't yet at 6 and 7 have a very strong developed sense of linear time. And so they're going to project that something might happen to them tomorrow if it's happening somewhere else today. And so some of these things have to be spoken to with the children so that they can be a little bit calmer about the time frame of things. All of the characteristics of the 6 to 12-year-old are really geared towards trying to understand the human dilemma. Are we good? Are we evil? Probably not the right question to ask. Maybe a better question is how do we navigate all of the dilemmas that human beings come up in and find better and better solutions for them? But it's very easy to just fall into, well, we don't know whether human beings are good or evil, but we could decide to divide the humans into good and evil. That would be easy. And then we always have somebody to blame. But it is important for us in our work with the 6 to 12-year-olds is to not let them slip into the easy way out of the black and white thinking, and yet at the same time not be kind of so relativistic that it doesn't really matter. It's all just subjective. It's just how you feel and so on. And I want, when I'm talking to children about really anything, is to think about, what does history really teach us about ourselves? And that we are not finished, that we are not finished as a species in our development. We created some great inventions that would have been inconceivable 300,000 years ago. We do have the capacity to change our very being. We rewire our brains for reading. We can also perhaps rewire our brains for peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carla. And I'd like to ask Dini if there's something that she has on her heart that she wants to share.
Oops. Can you hear me? Yes, I guess you can.
Yes.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be with you. I'm from Denmark, and I worked in the refugee camp in Copenhagen. Not a camp, it's a refugee center in Copenhagen. And I think Madeleine very kindly said that I had set the whole thing up, but I hadn't. I worked with the small children. The camp had been, the center had been there for a long time, taking refugees from all over the world. And when I came, there were quite a few refugees from all over the world. And I started working with a small family, 3 children, and mostly I was supposed to look after the little boy, the youngest child. The eldest child was annoyed. He thought that I should not have anything to do with the family because he was the eldest boy and he was supposed to be looking after the family. He had this big, what shall I say, sack monkey on his back, on his shoulder. Anyway, I started working with the little boy and I brought my Montessori rucksack into the center, and the little boy and I had a lovely time together. And then the other parents with small children, they got pretty cross about it because why should this family be allowed to have a person to help them and not us? They were all in need. So I very rashly said, I can look after all the little children, before sort of realizing that I didn't have a place where there was water or where I could change their diapers, nappies. So I sort of backed out a bit. But then they found a place for us to be, and and I worked with them. What I'd like to say is that I'd like to go right back to 1999, when the first educateur was in Italy, and we had a talk from someone from a very, very big camp, and one of the things that he said, which was very important, was that they had made a place, I wouldn't call it a kindergarten, but a place where the small children could be gathered, because exactly what Tina was talking about, and Madeleine also, the very small children couldn't have this thing of the parents going out every time new refugees came, and they'd go out and they'd be very worried about who was coming and want to know what was going on, and getting very, very desperate. And so this what should I call it? The guy who arranged everything in the camp decided that there had to be a place for these small children to be, so they didn't see this every day, this reoccurring event that I think a lot of you were talking about also. Yeah, seeing things on the television again and again and again, thinking that maybe it was new things all the time. It was actually new things all the time, every day. And then the other thing I want to say about that was that the teenagers, maybe a little older than 12, the 6 to 12s, but the older ones, they were intent on helping. And how could they help? And the organizers needed blankets for people that were coming in, and these children said, or these young people said, we can easily do that. We'll go around and see if people have an extra blanket they can give. So they did that, and it wasn't stealing or anything. It was just getting, finding blankets that could be used for other people inside the camp. Not us others donating things, but inside the camp there were people that were able to give each other things. I just wanted to share that with you. So as I said, I worked at the Red Cross Center. I worked there for 5 years, and I had this small group of children, and in the beginning I was alone with 5 children, but the more children that came, I needed at least one more person to help me. It was very what shall I say? I don't think they'd ever had anything like that in Red Cross before. They didn't have anything for small children. They only had for children from the age of 6, from the age of 3 to 6. So people donated chairs and tables and shelves to me. And also there were people who donated Montessori materials. So we got on. We never knew how many children that were coming in the morning. We knew how many children that were supposed to be with us, but sometimes some of them didn't turn up, and we'd have to go out and find out where they were and bring them back with us. And sometimes things got very, what shall I say, hot in at the center. Maybe there was a father or a mother who had some difficulties and behaved very wildly. So they would, all the children, the teenagers, the young children, and the baby, and us, we all locked ourselves into the kindergarten rooms so that the children would be safe. Every day, this is a sort of a Red Cross thing. Every day we were told, nonsense. We were told that every day we should be the same. We should be the same people that always welcomed our children and our parents into the room, that we looked happy, that we looked confident, and that we were extremely happy to see them, both parents and children. So our own worries and whatever, they were supposed to be left at home or on the bus out to the center. So, and it was easy actually to be happy with these children, even though we knew many of the things that had happened to them were not, they were not good. Another thing that was extremely important for these small children was that the daily routine was the same. So I would be very Montessori and go in thinking, now this child needs this, that child needs that, and hopefully the day would be so that we could do our routine, have our routine day and do our Montessori work, eat together, sing together, speak together. That's another thing. There were so many different languages. So we decided to speak Danish with the children because we were hoping that they would have, when you think of COVID, you want negative and not positive, but these people wanted positive. So that's what we talked with the parents about, and their hopes and whatever. And with the children, we talked and sang and whatever in Danish, sometimes using not very many words, sometimes using our hands, beckoning, come dear, come to me, and so forth. So, and anyway, they were in their sensitive period for language. So very quickly, these small children learned a lot of Danish. I've talked about it being a safe place. Another thing was music and singing and going for good long walks. And we were lucky that the center was right out in the middle of nature. The parents were not too pleased about it. That meant that they had to take the bus to go in and buy food and stuff. But it was good for the children because there were woods and there were sandy places and there were the beach and the water and so forth. So there were many different experiences for them. Also experiences of the insects, the birds, the animals, whatever there was around, which meant a lot for them. And all 3 trainers have been in around the thing about answering the children. what they want to know. And even the tiny children sometimes ask questions. And the thing was to just simply remember to only answer what they'd asked and nothing else. Yeah, I'd also like to not talk about, but just mention the Peace Boat, because there were teenagers also here. I had the smallest children, the children from is it not 0, but the children. We decided we had to tell the parents that the children could only come to us if they could walk, and that was a bit of an obstacle for some of the parents, because they used to wander around with the children on their arms. So that meant that they suddenly decided that they needed to teach their children to walk, because we couldn't go around with 10 children on our arms. So that was the one thing. And then the next group of children, they were the 3 to 6s. That was the normal Danish kindergarten type of children, of place for them. And then there was the school for the older children and also for the teenagers. And then there were times for the teenagers and the other children to be alone. And I know that the teachers and the other center people also talked with the teenagers, and they were able to go to the psychologists and talk with them also about their different problems. The Peace Boat came to visit us. I don't know if everyone knows what the Peace Boat is. So it's a wonderful thing that the some Japanese people found out to do. They hired a boat, and they called it the Peace Boat. And the Peace Boat sails, or did sail, all around the world, and visited different ports. For example, they visited maybe Lebanon, where the unplaced what are they called? The unplaced people from Palestine live, and also some Israelis. So they could invite Israelis and these unplaced Palestinian people on board the ship, and they could come, maybe actually young people. So there could be a dialogue between these two people. And they visited Copenhagen several times, and they came out to visit the center, the refugee center, and they very kindly invited the teenagers to come on board the Peace Boat. And it was a great experience for these teenagers to come on board and understand that there was a possibility to talk with anybody all over the world and find out that you can actually live in peace with each other. So I do have some photos from Kongalund that Tom maybe would put up. I don't know. Can you do that?
Yes, they're coming up.
Okay. That's as you can see, the Red Cross flag, always flying. Okay. And that's one of our little refugee guys walking in the snow. We often had to find clothes for them, for the children, because the parents would often come with them with just maybe sandals on, no clothes for winter in Denmark. So the playground was given by some firm to us, and the houses you see in the background, that was for women and children who had no husband, or who came alone. Next, please. Yeah, there are two people from Afghanistan, and I love this picture because I think that they are such, they've been through an enormous amount of things, but they have their pride still with them. Thank you. Next. Yeah, there's the same little boy with his father. You see that he always came with the child to the school or to us, carrying him. But he could walk and he could play and he could use a tricycle, but not when he came. There's a little girl. You think that the children, you sort of think that they come from places not like where she came from. She came from Morocco. So we were, yeah. And here's a normal everyday thing, or not an everyday thing, but a normal thing that has to happen. Somebody has a birthday and we have a lovely birthday party. Yeah, this is the last picture. My sister and brother-in-law have a farm and also have horses. You can see this little girl is from, I can't remember, someplace in Africa. But the thing is that we were allowed to come with them to the farm, and my brother-in-law warned the children against some of the horses, said that they might bite. But the strange thing was that all these horses came up to all the little children and just stood with them and were with them and let them touch them. And it was like they knew that the children needed them, needed their love. Thank you.
Thank you, Dini. Thank you very much for sharing those stories with us. And we do have some questions in chat, so we'll look at those now. We have a little bit of time. One of the questions that seems to be coming back from different people is, where is the division between we don't tell them anything and we just try to make them feel safe, and when do we need to start being honest and explain? And so somebody was commenting on that, what Tina said, and Madlena, and where I have a child and how do I know, when is the time? So if Tina and Madlena, if you could speak about that a little bit.
Well, I'm thinking that we know when our children change, right? When their behavior changes in some way or another. And often that is because they're trying to tell us that something is on their mind, whether it is a change in a sleep pattern or eating pattern or in behavior in the class towards aggressiveness, towards being more withdrawn. So when any of these kind of things might happen these days now, I think you should take this as a sign. Right? That something is gnawing on the child, on their inside, and that this is something we need to talk about. I mean, even in the children's house, it doesn't need to be something where I think, oh, I need to talk to all children at the same time. Maybe you start with one. Maybe you start by just asking, I see something seems to be bothering you, and you seem sad today. Is there something you're thinking about, right? Opening the conversation, making it possible for the child to talk about something that I saw this, I saw that, right? Listen to them, right? Sometimes children say things, they repeat it all over and over and over again, where you really feel that, oh, this child has seen something very scary, maybe on TV or whatever. And this is something that is bothering them. Otherwise, maybe the child might be quite normal, but you feel that this is not normal behavior from this child to be talking about this over and over and over again. So it's obviously something that is bothering them. Maybe you will, start a conversation with one child, or maybe a small group. It's not really something where you say, come children, let's all gather up together and let me tell you about what's going on in the world, right? It's not that type of conversation. It's more that making sure that the children know that here is an adult who is trying to make sure that they are safe, and trying to make sure that that they know that we can talk about these things. I think also as both Dini and Tina mentioned, that we really should think about the parents. Maybe it's not you who should have that conversation. Maybe your parents need that help to know, what should I talk about? How should we talk about this? There are other associations, as the Red Cross, for example, or UNICEF, who might have some guidelines, some more information that you absolutely should look into. So I think also for us as teachers who might be receiving students, children who are refugees at the moment, that we need to educate ourselves in this and learn more about it if we don't have any particular experience with this.
And you just need to observe. And as Madeleine was saying, you will see the change. Sometimes it can just be a hug that they need, the little ones. They just come to you and maybe need hugs more often than normally, and you will find out, oh, there is something. He needs to really feel the security from my side or from our school, and that's what I'm going to give to him if that's what he needs. And as I was just writing here words, talk to the parents in the same way that Madeleine, that help the parents as much as you can. Have a normal conversation. We don't need to give lectures about these things. I think we as parents, we are happiest when somebody just said, you are doing fine, you can try this and this and just have this and this, but not give them a whole load of something in this situation.
Thank you. One of the things that I can see in the chat, people are asking, how do we stay calm and balanced when we are scared ourselves? How do we help the child feel safe when we don't feel safe? And I don't know if there's a way to answer that.
I think all of us might have different things to calm ourselves down. Some of us will go and have a walk in the forest, as Dini was talking. Some of us maybe wants to have some mindfulness moments or do some workouts, whatever is the best for you to put you in balance. I think that's the best thing you can do for your child.
Yes, and maybe find a community of people who are struggling with the same, that you can support each other. Thank you. There's a question also, I will read it. What to do with the child, let's say of the age of 6, when they start behaving like a child of the age of 4? When you observe their regress because of the stress they had after hearing explosions and after having to run to the shelter and spending days in there, what to do? And maybe Dini could address that, I guess. No. You're muted, Dini.
I need to yeah. I think it's extremely difficult to address. I know that many of our children were very stressed. I remember one little girl who had been through an enormous amount of problems, seeing her mother, seeing something awful happen to her mother, seeing something awful happen to her father, and so forth. And she was what we saw with her was that she always had her I don't know what you call it in English, the dummy, in her mouth. No, it wasn't actually. It was a bottle of milk which she walked around with, and then she always held it up to her mouth. So that meant that at least she couldn't talk, and it also meant we sort of couldn't get near her. It was at the center, there was a large kitchen where everyone, it was a community kitchen. There was no kitchen in each little flat. So everyone made their food in the community kitchen. And what would happen often was that there would be accidents. And this child was extremely accident prone. And so when we got her at the school, she didn't speak, she never smiled, she was just, yeah, she was shell-shocked. I guess that's what I can say about her. But we treated her like we treated the other children, and, you know, welcomed her into the school every day, and was like she began to feel safer there, and began to eat her food, and eventually took the bottle away from her mouth and put it on the table. And why I'm laughing a little bit was that at one point, when she'd been with us for quite a long time, she pushed the bottle over to me as if she was saying, "Dinny, take it. I don't need it anymore." But yeah, it for me it was extraordinary. Actually, it makes me think of when the children in Italy, children with the earthquake in Italy, they at Montessori's own time, they were taken in by some nuns, and they did practical life things with them, enormous amount of practical life things with them, and it seemed that the practical life things actually saved these children, and it's what I sort of also saw us doing, sort of everyday ordinary things with these tiny children. And I also remember another child who was enormously fat, and she'd been put in a walking machine, and she'd whiz around in this machine and frighten all the other little children. So she came along too, and she couldn't do anything because she'd been in that machine all the time. So she couldn't walk, and she just couldn't do anything other than that. And she was also also a very grim look on her face all the time, never smiling. And actually, when she got out of the machine and it was easier for her to move around, she'd start biting the other children. But again, with this child, it was practical life and doing everything, doing the ordinary everyday things. I don't know, it's really a difficult situation to be in for a mother, I think, especially, and a father. But I think a lot of love and a lot of comfort, and being taken in one's arms so that they know that you're there for them. I think that's the sort of thing that I think that as a parent, one would simply want to do that. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a question for Carla. Somebody writes, I'm from India and I have an elementary class. Do I breach this subject with them if they don't know anything about it? There's nothing, in the media about it. Today in the morning, I asked them if they know something big is happening in the world, and no one seemed to know, no one spoke up. So hence my question, do I bring it up myself as a teacher?
I actually don't know how to answer that question, because you're still in that balance again about what do we protect children from and what do we open them to. We are living in a global society where it actually does matter what happens on the other side of the world. So that's one reason to bring it up in a simple way. However, again, it's going to create anxiety where there might not have been before. And I think that one has to just be aware that whatever you do, it might be the wrong thing. And yet, whatever you do, it's always going to be the community. And I agree much with Dinny that in any situation of stress, it's practical, everyday, ordinary things that keep us sane and that help us regain our own balance in general. And to do cooking with children, to do walking with children, to look at the beauty of nature together, thinking about that, okay, we might live in sort of extraordinary times where it doesn't feel like something is going to affect us that's on the other side of the world, but it might. And that might is very scary. And so how do we deal with fear in general? I don't think we need to be afraid of fear, because it's important for us to say, yeah, it could be scary that something that's happening on another side of the world in a place I can't even find on the map might actually be something that could cause problems for me down the line. And yet that we have to, that is our big challenge as human beings, is to tackle that kind of existential fear. It's the same fear that we have to tackle with regards to climate change and other things where it matters what's happening on the other side of the world. So if you bring it up, you're going to have to deal with the fear that gets created. If you don't bring it up, you're going to have to deal with ignorance. And so it's which one do you want to be dealing with in terms of the elementary children? And whatever you do, you're going to have to work at it. And whatever you do, you have to find things that bring your community together, help the children identify what holds a community together, what keeps a community compassionate towards other communities, and saying that it doesn't have to be us against them. And that, I think, you are going to have to deal with at some point, even if you don't deal with it with this particular conflict, there's going to be another conflict closer to home where you are going to have to deal with it. And I really don't think there's like some magic conversation you can have with children about between 6 to 12 about how, which will allay their anxiety, in the same way that we don't need to lie to them about death. We don't need to lie to them and say that, oh, well, no, I'll never die, or, you know, we won't die. And it's like, death, loss is a part of life. And how do we deal with it? We deal with it together. And that is the only thing that has kept us going through the thousands of years of problems that we've met as a species.
Madlena, do you want to add something?
Yes, I would just like to add to what Denise said also, that of course there will be traumatized children, traumatized adults, traumatized people in the aftermath of a conflict, of a war like this. And I think when you're in the middle of it, there's nothing much you can do but to stay sane, to stay safe as much as you can, and to, you know, accept the fact that you will change, your children will change, your surroundings will change, because it is unbearable for human beings. The only thing that we, you know, can say something about is that what can we do with our communities that are not in the middle of this? There are other people who are more specialists about how do we help traumatized children and families. What little I have had time to read on this topic at the moment is also that it is a multi-layered approach that one should have in the end, right? It's not just about helping this particular child, but also the child, the family, the school, the teacher, the community. Everybody needs at some point to be part of this healing process. Some more direct, some more intensive, some more remote. But that will be down the line. Right now, it's more about the how we as a community from wherever we are can help our children to cope with this, who are facing these news, or the maybe not imminent threat, but still a threat to the order of the world as they know it. Yeah, that is more what we can talk about in this meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I have something.
Yes, go ahead.
Denmark's quite close. Well, not as close, but quite close to where to all you. And some Danish children, I think they're around 10, 12 maybe, dealing with this everyday problem by actually following where the troops are going and what's happening in the country. That seems to be a help for them to see what's going on. I don't know, but it might be a sort of a help in some way that one knows as a 12-year-old or maybe even older what is actually going on. Yeah. Another thing, by the way, I wanted to say, I think maybe Tom would help me. He promised to put a lovely book up on the chat for me, which I think would be good for everyone to, if they can get hold of it, to read. Yeah, that's it. From the Top of the Trees. I was so lucky to hear her read from it. It's a story about herself in the refugee camp, where her father is quite fantastic. He's one of the people who knows he was one of the people who knew what to do with small children. So if you can get hold of it, read it. Okay.
Thank you, Dini. There's some things that we won't be able to answer today. One of them is quite a lot of questions about adolescents. We are wanting to find an AMI adolescent trainer who can maybe have come to this conversation on a different time and speak with us or share with us how can we speak with adolescents about what is happening and how can we help them feel that they can help. So that'll be a different topic for a different day. Dini, there's a student from Ukraine who wants to get in touch with you. So I'm going to put you through by email, just that you know, okay? There's a person asking to get directly in touch with you after the session so that they know. And there are some questions also related to the trauma itself. How do we work and support children who come out of those areas when they come, for example, to our home? And how do we provide help and support to a family that's going to live in our house that just came out from war? So that's not a topic of the session of today, and we will be looking for somebody to help us with that. I know Kathy Minardi and I have been discussing, and I can see Kathy. She's nodding her head. Maybe Tomasz, if you spotlight Kathy and let her say a word, we'll be trying to find somebody. And let's put up Kathy. Okay, there's Kathy. So Kathy.
Yes, we're making some progress in putting together a couple of things through Whole School Leadership and Lead Montessori to give you more and more support. I have to say that it sounds very selfish, but it is so comforting. You talk about community, to be together with all of you. We all needed this. Thank you so much for being here, and there's more coming.
Thank you, Kathy. And I think with this, we want to close today. Carla said something that really stuck with me at the beginning when she talked, and she said there are two ways to deal with this: either defense, aggression, or stick together as a community. Find your community and stick it together, stick through it together. And I think I hope that today this session was a little bit about being a community and trying to stick through this together. I hope that you leave with feeling a bit supported and loved, and knowing that there are other people around the globe who are in a similar situation, struggling with this, and also being afraid and trying to make some sense out of this. So thank you for coming today, and thank you every one of our speakers. Thank you so much for being willing to do this. I will close with a quote from Maria Montessori, and then we can all, maybe we can allow people to unmute and say goodbye in their language. Tomasz, what do you think when I read the quote? We like to do that, and I think we can finish by allowing people to have a voice and say goodbye. So here's the quote, and we will be in touch with when we have more support for you. If salvation and help are to come, it is from the child. For the child is the constructor of man and of society. The child is endowed with an inner power which can guide us to a more enlightened future. Thank you all for coming.